And welcome back to another episode of Stories from the Shed.
Again with the and. I'm going to pick on you.
Okay, well. Welcome back to another episode of Stories from the Shed. My name is Adam, and with me again this week, a man who was kicked out of a Chinese buffet last week for the third time. Jake, keep your hands off the crab legs.
I legitimately have not been to a Chinese buffet in like 3 months.
Well, that's not what Ashton just told me. How you doing?
Where did you see me?
At the Chinese buffet.
Which one? There's like 6 of them.
You're at Lotus.
And I saw him at the other one
really
there across the street.
It. You know what? You're right.
How
many
many
crab
have you
legs.
been kicked out of?
Hmm?
How many have you been kicked out of?
I don't want to talk about it.
Jake, people are going to ask me now. I got to give them a firm number.
A firm number?
Yeah.
Well, I'm drinking beer 75, right? Someone's keeping track.
Jake's been banned out of every Chinese buffet in the state of Maine.
Yeah, basically.
All over crab legs. Huh?
All over crab legs.
I can't help myself.
He knows when they're coming out hot. And again with us, we've got Jurgen for another great episode about ACS.
ACS.
What a great place.
Right?
Hey, how you been since the last time we came out to the shed?
I've been pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. It feels like we haven't even left the shed, really.
Right?
Shed life.
Shed life. That's what it's taken over.
Shed light. Shed life.
And you know that last beer we were drinking?
We're still drinking it.
We're still drinking it because we haven't gone far, and it's still delicious, and it's still getting 5 from us.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. So I guess we can jump right into it. Jurgen, what do we got going on?
All right. So we left off with, the Richard Dwyer case. And you'd think, like, at a place like ACS, some little call center, that would be the end of it. Nothing else crazy would happen. But another homicide happened again.
Dun, dun, dun.
Really? How many people worked at ACS?
Okay. So at this point, roughly, there were probably about 500-ish people.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Between who was at the site and they had some people working from home at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they have like a mostly in-house crew, and then they had some work from home type of thing?
Yeah. So there were different campaigns. At this point, there was some change up. So now we're jumping like 2.5 years ahead.
Okay.
At this point, some of the programs were no longer there. We got some new ones.
And ACS is a much safer place to work,
Much
right?
safer, of course.
They're doing background checks now?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
There was a lawsuit that was taken out against them, right?
Yes, there was that lawsuit for the Dwyer case that was settled out of court.
So we can assume.
We can assume they're doing their due diligence at this point.
This lawsuit was settled at this point, right?
Right.
Okay.
They must, right?
Yep.
All right.
So at this point, I am on a new program called Opinion. It was wonderful.
Woo!
Woo! And that's when we got a whole new cast of characters here. So, 2009 at this point, we have a gentleman that starts working with us by the name of Buddy Robinson. He worked on the Opinion campaign with Ashton and I.
Yes.
And this is when Ashton wakes out of his coma.
Right?
Right.
And I'm not so chill.
He's not so chill.
No.
No, there was nothing chill about that program. Do you care to elaborate on the hell that was Opinion?
Let's see. No one knew anything about it, including the customers.
Right?
Awesome.
So we had the pleasure of explaining to different age group of customers how they were enrolled in some program that they've never used a day in their life and how they should keep it. So
Right.
They were automatically enrolled?
Right. So to back this up, and
Jake,
I don't.
did you work there?
What?
that was spot on, right?
That was
Automatically.
So not
is that
only
how that
were
worked?
yeah, not only were the customers in the dark, but I think we all were too. So I don't know what they told you when they hired you for this, but at the time I was over still on Barclays when I got a call from my manager who wanted me to transfer over to this new great program called Opinion, where I possibly was going to get like a $5,000 raise and become the operations manager.
Hell
Well,
yeah.
I'm already convinced.
Yeah,
Right,
me too.
great. Yeah, let's do this.
When can I start?
Right.
Right?
So I'm like, what's this about? They're like, oh, it's insurance. It's great. It's easy. You'll do wonderful. And then I'm plopped in this class, and it's not insurance. And I'm not really sure what it is for the first week I'm there. Right. So basically, like Ashton said, it was these strange membership programs that were essentially weird coupon books, if you want to call it that. that people, generally elderly, had been enrolled in when they were calling to order something completely different.
And most of the stores for the coupons were stores that no one had access to. Like, I never...
Oh, so like for this area, like a Walgreens type of thing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Useless.
Okay.
Right. And like there was like coupon books and stuff like that. There was one program called, I think it was Complete Home, and you could get discounts on home improvement things, and it was more of a reimbursement, but no one really knew how to use it. No one was really accepting the rebates.
So now, were these people paying for these things coming to their house?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, I mean,
So
nothing
how
was
do you-
even coming to their house. Like, they were just, like, charges were showing up on, like, their cards. And, yeah, maybe they got some junk mail, but nobody, like, knew what this was.
And so this
Yeah,
caused a
weird.
real chaotic in
Oh,
and out
yeah.
every day.
Every day.
Right. So it was, like,
Oh,
the
my
agent's
God.
job at this point to try to get them to keep this thing that was completely useless.
What they called saving, right?
Saving.
Wow, that sounds like a shitty job.
It was hell.
And everybody's pissed off, I'm sure, all the time.
Oh,
Everyone
my
was
God.
pissed. It was like my full-time job at one point to run games to try to keep people happy. It was like a very chaotic environment.
Did you ever have a happy customer at the
No.
end of a phone call?
No,
Oh my
No.
God. Fuck that.
no, it was pretty bad, like all around.
So this kind of paints ACS at that time when
Oh,
this
yeah.
story is about to begin.
Things have
Right.
not gotten much better, but no one's dying.
No one's
At
dying
least
yet.
not as of yet. Now what happens?
So they open up this new program. They also open up Allstate's roadside side assistance, like kind of like a AAA thing that that Allstate was putting on.
Oh,
Sign me
Allstate,
up
you're
for that
in not
one.
so great hands. Trust me,
Right.
I work in the industry.
Right. So they like kind of sat next to us. We there was like this invisible line of what was Affin and what was Allstate at this point. So we were all kind of there in these weird, like, I don't know, pinwheel shaped cubicles. So, you know, if we're going to kind of race into it, Buddy was in one of my training classes in 2009. It was a pretty, like, rough training class. We had a whole bunch of, like, really crazy characters, like, in that actual class. A lot of them lived out in this hotel, down towards kind of where, like, the health club and spa is in like, Lewiston, Lisbon line. I don't know how they all
yeah.
ended up there.
Is this the one
I
with the
used to have
pink
a
lights?
membership there.
It's across the street from the one with the pink lights.
This is just kind of one of those hotels where people either live there or it's what they call the old sleep and fuck kind of place. You know what I
Right.
mean? You know, it's not the Holiday Inn you're going to take your kids to.
No.
This is just, you know, one of those sort of places,
No.
right?
It was like a bizarre situation because we had all these people who were like pretty nuts, and they were all like living there at one point, and they didn't really know each other at all. So it was pretty bizarre. But Buddy was part of that class, and he was like literally the only normal one. Only normal one. And at the same time, his twin sister Brandy was part of the Allstate campaign.
So she was already working there.
I believe they got hired around the same time because the programs itself like opened and launched at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
During this time, another young woman was working for the Allstate campaign as well. Her name was Christiana Fesmeyer, and she was really a great girl. She really was, and Ashton can kind of attest to that.
She was a nice girl.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know her really great, but anytime, like, I ran into her in the smoking area, there was, like, she just was just bubbly and nice, and she was just great. And unfortunately, she was the one who was killed. So to kind of give a brief background of kind of what went on, and kind of try to follow a timeline, I might kind of interject because I kind of know some stuff being so close to the situation. We can kind of go with that. So basically in 2019, Buddy and his twin sister Brandy were employed over at Affiliated Computer Services, or ACS, and that is where they met Christiana. They all lived in an apartment, like not apartment complex, but it was like a 2-unit over on Highland Avenue in Lewiston.
Sure.
And Brandy and Buddy and Brandy's son Michael were living on the top floor at that time. And around that time, Christiana moved into the ground floor.
Huh.
So they were all living in the same apartment
Right.
building.
And the reason being was Brandy was running an escort service, and people from ACS were getting recruited to work for her. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. All right. That's all happening right around my neck of the woods. That's weird.
So an escort service, this is like you phone in, you get a date sort of thing for the night.
So they were advertising on Backpage for clients, and they were working out of the apartment. So Brandy was working as like a madam. She also was escorting. Christiana was also escorting, working for Brandy.
What kind of money you think they were bringing in?
They were making a lot of money.
From what I understand.
So why are they working at ACS?
I think it was like insurance and a bit of like a cover.
Okay.
But they were making, quite a bit of money. Some people say that Brandy like owned the building they were living in. I don't know that was true. From what I understood, they had a landlord who kind of just stayed out of it type of thing.
Yeah.
Or like kind of like abandoned the building.
Huh.
Because like Brandy let Christiana move on to the first floor. So they were kind of running this like escort service prostitution type ring like out of the building.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any idea how many girls were actually involved?
So the ones that I actually know, it was Brandy, Christiana, and then there was a girl named Alana who was a former, she was a student over at UMaine Presque Isle, and she met everyone through Buddy because he went to school up there, but she was living in Canada.
For those that are not from this area, Presque Isle is a small town that's about 4.5, 5 hours from here.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was like a really strange situation, and how I came to knowing this was Buddy actually worked for me, and we worked every night together till 8 p.m., and we were pretty good friends. We didn't have actual team leads or anything like that, at ACS, but if there was going to be, equivalent of one, he was that. He helped me coach all of my agents. He did call monitorings. He helped people get better at their saves.
Sounds like a model employee.
Yeah, he was all around really great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Not someone you'd think would do anything like this. It was pretty wild, but
Did you trust him?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
What was do you recall, Ashton, your opinions of this guy at the time?
I can't say that I really knew Buddy. I knew through passing, and I had seen him, but I was more familiar with the young lady.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah, I bet you were.
So pretty much how I came to know this was, Buddy would work with me till 8, and a lot of nights he kept having to leave early. And at ACS, they had a pretty strict attendance policy. It went in a series of points, and once you hit 7 points, you were out the door.
A lot of places do something like that.
So he was getting up there in his points, and I really didn't want to see him go because he was a pretty great asset to, the department. He kept morale up. So I was like, what's going on? So he was having to leave early because his sister Brandy had to go to work, and I was like, what's going on? So he had told me, initially that she was running some sort of medical billing, side thing out of the house, and she needed Buddy to go home to watch her son.
Huh.
So, this went on for a little while, and, basically I said to him, I'm like, cut the bullshit,
You caught on. You said to yourself,
I'm like,
this isn't the truth.
This is not the truth. I'm like, is she running a brothel or something? And then he, came clean to me.
Actually, yes.
Yeah, I didn't, really, expect that to be, an affirmative that he would confirm to me. But, that's exactly what was going on.
And did he tell you?
You called it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did he tell you who else was involved in it?
Yeah.
Is this when everything came out to you, the full?
Yeah, he told me all about it. There was also a supervisor over in Allstate. He was a supervisor trainer named Levi. And he was also involved with it at the time. This is what Buddy tells me. That he would help recruit some of the ladies and drive them around. Because they'd often go down to Foxwoods and stuff.
To make some money.
To make some money.
Sure.
And he told me basically everything was out on the board. So at that point, I probably should have said something about it, but I don't if everything's consensual, I don't think it's really a big deal. I'm pretty sex positive in that way.
And maybe you're just not one to get involved in other people's shit.
Yeah.
Why do you think he told you?
I don't know. He probably trusted me.
Yeah, I would say he did if he told you all of that.
Yeah, I would say.
But, I said, hey, how about Brandy, drop her son off, and you can still work, and I'll just watch him at my desk.
I'm going to help you.
Yeah. So there were many nights where she would drop Michael off, and we would just sit at my desk, and we talk about World of Warcraft, and we look at characters on my computer, and I would just like watch this like 7-year-old till like 8 p.m. So
Wow.
yeah, it was
Wow.
pretty wild.
That's wild.
Yep.
While you're working.
While I'm working.
Yeah. And knowing that this is going on.
Yep.
It's wild.
Yeah, it was something. So this is all going on, and then I would say it was July when this all went down. One day Buddy had come in and was like, they're looking for Christiana, they can't find her. And like, the detectives are coming to talk to us, and that he kind of left it at that, and I didn't think he was involved in anything, but that's when things started to get crazy. So at that point, like, again, the cops are now coming to work again. And
as we all know,
yes.
That's a normal thing.
That's a pretty...
No one's
seemingly
shaking up.
Yeah, it's a pretty normal thing.
Oh, hey, guys, there's donuts in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, waiting for you.
At this point as well, like, Buddy stops coming to work, and then I find out he has checked himself into St. Mary's because he's had a mental break.
Oh, great.
So at this point, like, I'm trying to keep close-lipped. I don't think that anyone in management knows about this yet. Little did I know they did.
Now, are people asking where Fessmeyer is?
No. At this point, I don't know that she actually worked at ACS anymore.
Oh, okay. So she was a former employee.
Right, yeah. She was a former employee at that point. But, like, people are asking me where Buddy is.
Yeah, because you guys were friends.
We were friends. Right. I was his direct supervisor, and people are wondering where Buddy is at this point. So I went and told, my boss at the time, what was going on, how the police were kind of on him about this, and he is now basically in the mental ward over at St. Mary's.
Wow.
That's kind of drove him to that. So went through this whole big thing of trying to get FMLA for him, but it didn't really work, and eventually we ended up having to terminate him. But that's kind of what was going on behind the scenes, like at the ACS level. We can kind of backtrack to kind of what went on that day, if you'd like.
Sure.
So pretty much how this started, it was on June 30th. I remember that day extremely well. It was cloudy. It was a payday Friday. And yeah, it was just like a normal day. And it was on June 30th in 2011. Christiana was going to borrow Brandy's Lexus. She had a number of different cars because they were, obviously making quite a bit of money from this prostitution ring.
Well, yeah, one for every day of the week.
Yeah. Right.
So she was going up to a family reunion up in Rangeley. They agreed to let her use the car. And she was supposed to pick up the car on the morning of July 1st, around 7 to 7:30.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she went over the car.
And this is in the morning?
This is in the morning.
Okay.
In the morning, before work, because our campaign didn't start till it was like 8 or 9 in the morning.
Okay.
So this is before work. So she goes there to pick up the car, and Brandy left the apartment with Alana, who was the girl who was working for her as an escort, who was from Canada.
Had you ever met her?
I've never met her.
Okay.
No. So, as they were leaving, Christiana saw them. They had a brief conversation about, where the car keys were, and Brandy left. So, per the affidavits and stuff, it says that Brandy and Alana went over to ACS. I don't know why they would have went there. Maybe to pick up a check. I mean, at that point, we weren't really giving paper checks out. Buddy told me they went to Dunkin' Donuts.
Maybe they just went in to say hi.
Yeah.
I mean, how people are the day off or whatever.
Right.
Or they know people there. There could have been a reason, just some kind of simple thing.
So, while they're out, allegedly, Brandy gets a call from Buddy on Christiana's cell phone. And he lets her know that they had a fight. So later that morning, they return to the apartment, and they notice that the Lexus is still there.
Wow.
So she hasn't taken off with the car yet?
Yeah, she has not gone to the family reunion at all.
Interesting.
Yes. So, Buddy was still there. He told his sister that he got into a fight with Christiana and that he took care of the situation.
Weird.
Yeah. Allegedly, at this point, per the affidavit and the testimony that was given, that Christiana's body was in the back of the car and the Lexus at that point.
Mm-hmm. At this time?
Yes.
Okay.
There was testimony from Brandy and Alana because they both, testified against him that his pants were wet. He said that Christiana had thrown up blood everywhere because she was on drugs. And after Buddy had left to go to work, because he had to get in like pretty early. Oftentimes, what he would do is he'd come in like in the morning and stay till like close.
Wow, long hours.
Wow.
Yeah, he'd either like, because it wasn't even his shift. His shift was like, a little bit like 10 or 11 in the morning till close, but he'd often come in just to hang out. Mm-hmm. Or if we were busy, he'd hop on, do sort of like a split shift thing, and then like close out.
Just to help out.
Yeah, just to help out. He like hung out there quite a bit. It was either he was working or he was just hanging out at my desk type of thing.
Yeah, it was a second home to him is what it sounds like.
Yeah, so when they went up, Brandy had stated that they found like blood splatter in the like apartments and like a mop and bucket, and it looked like there was some sort of cleanup.
But nobody knows really what's happened.
But no one really knows what happens at this point. So you've got a apartment that there's a smell of bleach. There's clearly been some sort of like cleanup. There's a mop and bucket, wet towels, like
suspicious.
Things of that sort. It's
suspicious.
It's sketchy. Christiana's not there, but the Lexus is still there.
Yeah. So where is she? They're wondering.
Yeah. Where is she? So at approximately 8 p.m. that day, Brandy went to pick Buddy up after he finished the shift, and they returned to the apartments. That night, like I remember actually really well because on payday Fridays, we'd all go out to this like Mexican restaurant that used to be in the parking lot, and we'd all do cheap wings.
Oh, yeah.
And we really wanted Buddy to come with us, but he was being like kind of like shifty about it and like didn't want to come. And I remember I was really upset about it.
Yeah, just come, yeah.
Right. So
it was normal for him to go with you guys?
Yeah, it was normal for him to come out with us. He just kind of wasn't really himself that day, looking back on it.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't being a buddy.
Right. He wasn't like his normal, like, cheery self. So that night, the reason he gave is they had to do a planned trip up to Presque Isle to get some, like, items that he had that were it was like in one of those, like, U-Haul storage places that he had left over from, like, when he was in college. So.
And like we stated earlier, that's 4.5, 5 hours away. So he's basically saying, I got to get back home, get some rest. You guys have fun, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
okay.
It was weird. So like that night, they actually didn't stay at the apartment. They took off to Augusta first and stayed at a hotel, which I found really odd. Like, why would you do that? Like, why waste money on a hotel driving 45 minutes?
I was going to say that's about 45 minutes
right,
away.
Just stay home at that point. So
did they actually stay, or did they just get it and keep driving?
No, they stayed overnight at a hotel.
Oh, they actually stayed. Yeah, that's kind of strange. Why wouldn't you just stay home?
Right, it was bizarre.
Because I was just thinking in my head, it would make sense if you rented the hotel room or you got the hotel room for the night just to kind of point, hey, I was here that night. I stayed at this hotel. To create, a story.
An alibi. Right. I couldn't have done it. I was 45 minutes up north.
But if they actually stayed there, that's kind of weird. It's not that much of a drive to Augusta. And
pointless.
Stay. You know what I mean?
It was really like a weird situation.
Yeah.
So Brandy went and drove, because she had a Cadillac SUV. She drove that, and then Buddy drove the Lexus. So.
And she's still in the trunk at this point, right?
No.
No?
No. So, I don't know if I want to jump to that yet, but so I guess I could. Between the time they drove to Augusta and when he left work is supposedly when he went and disposed of her. And
wow,
what they find out later, he just would say it's a swampy area. No other details type of situation.
This is now, but you're saying he says to his sister?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So the night that they're staying in Augusta, Buddy sent a series of text messages to a woman that he worked with in the National Guard. In the text messages, he wrote that he was a really horrible person, that he had hurt someone really badly, and that he didn't have to worry about her anymore. He'll never see her again. When the lady pressed on as to why, he said it was because she's dead.
Wow.
He described himself as an evil person and said that he didn't deserve to live. So he pretty much at that point had, come out to somebody that he had committed the crime.
Was this while he was that night in Augusta?
Yeah, in the hotel.
And this all seems pretty common of somebody that has committed a murder. Bizarre behavior, out of the normal, wanting to get away a little, create some distance between themselves and the actual crime scene, and then feeling a need to come clean to somebody that he, was close to.
Yeah. So it was strange. So they go ahead and they spend the night in the Augusta hotel. Mm-hmm. They went to a store at Robinson Quest where they bought some paper towels, bleach, air fresheners. I believe this occurred in the Walmart parking lot in Augusta, because I believe that's where they left the car. So they noticed that there was a smell coming out of the trunk of the Lexus. They left it there, and went and picked it up the next day. Mm-hmm. So that kind of wraps up. There's not a lot of details about what went on in Presque Isle. It did raise questions later as to why he was going up there, the day this happens. But I do believe that they were just really retrieving stuff from the locker. Getting something planned. Now, before we go any further here, we should probably take a quick beer break.
Yeah, I agree.
Tracy, police have never been able to find Christiana Fessmeyer's body, but even with that key piece of this case still missing, the jury only took about an hour before returning to the courtroom and convicting Buddy Robinson of her murder.
Mr. Foreman, is the defendant, Buddy Robinson, guilty or not guilty, as alleged against him in the indictment charging murder?
Jake, put those crab legs down. We're back, and we got a fresh beer, and we're ready to continue on with this story. Ashton, wake up.
He's going. He's so sucked into the story.
It's sucked into the story, and he's sucked down a couple of these brewskis, so he's
playing it cool.
He's playing it cool. This guy is still chill. He's the Iceman. Jurgen, where did we leave off?
Right, so where we left off, basically they're coming back from Presque Isle. So when they returned to Lewiston from that, they had actually planned a camping trip. So Brandy, Buddy, and two other people, I believe it was possibly Levi, who was Brandy's boyfriend at the time, possibly her son, they went on a camping trip, and I believe it was that campground that's over in Monmouth or Litchfields.
Would that be Beaver Brook?
No. The Birches?
The Birches, that is in Litchfield, yeah.
Okay.
And that's also fairly close to this area.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So from there, he started disposing of stuff that was in the trunk. I believe there was a gold-colored comforter he ripped up and put into the campfire. Mm-hmm. They also pulled, I believe, the carpeting out of the Lexus trunk and burned it, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And that's when, allegedly, from the testimony of those who were there, that's when he started spilling what had happened. So he told Brandy that he had to sit on Christiana in the bathtub to kill her.
Really?
Really.
This is kind of hard to envision in my mind.
So that's where it started to get hard for me, because if we're going to for those who don't know who these folks are, Christiana was a very small lady. She was a model. She was very thin and dainty, almost pixie-like. Buddy was a humongous ex-army vet.
Okay.
It would not take much to overpower her.
So he's saying squishing her in the tub?
So what they say allegedly happened was he hit her face off the bathtub, and when she didn't die, he filled the bathtub up, submerged her, and sat on her.
Oh.
Now, he
oh my God.
wouldn't have to do that.
Wouldn't imagine.
No. From the picture I brought in,
it sounds like a lot of work.
He's not a small guy.
Yeah, we'll put this picture up on the Facebook page too.
He's not a little guy at all. He was huge. He had giant Popeye arms.
Wow.
So, that's when, when I heard some of this, I started questioning things myself. So at that point, this is actually when he told them that he disposed of her body in a swampy area.
Sure.
With no other...
Lots of swampy areas around here.
Right. That could be literally anywhere. So during that weekend when they were at the camping trip, Brandy sold Lexus to someone who was looking to buy the car.
Oh, that was nice.
Like, convenient.
Yeah, soon after they got back. And very soon after they got back, they cleaned the apartment up and moved out.
Oh, wow.
Yes. They ended up moving to a small rented house that was on Sabata Street. Kind of next to Bork's. So if you're like at Bork's, right next door is a little car dealership, and right next door to that is this tiny little like white house. That's where they lived.
And Bork's is one of those small mom and pop type grocery stores.
Yeah,
specialty meats kind of
that's
place.
Literally right down the road from where they were.
When did they start looking for Festmeyer? I mean, how much time has gone by now?
So I mean, pretty quick. So she didn't show up at the family reunion, so people started questioning. At the time, she was kind of not really living at the apartment anymore. She just hadn't come to get all of her stuff. I guess it wasn't really a great living situation for her. You know, I don't really, if there was like some fighting going on, I imagine she wasn't really getting along with Brandy at that point. What they say is she started telling people that she was working as an escort for Brandy, and that started causing problems. At the time, she was living with a couple. That I knew one of the couple, and they went through a lot of hell when this was going on. Like the investigators started pressing them first, and it was not a great situation. So people were looking for her pretty quickly.
Sure. Now, Ashton, did you know that Festmeyer was doing things like this?
From what I knew about her, I would have never assumed any of this. Even just listening to Jurgen tell this story, I haven't said much because it's all brand new to me.
Really?
I'm picturing everything she's saying and all of this going on, and I'm picturing this girl's face attached to everything that she's saying, and I can't even make sense of it.
Well, how do you remember her?
Like she said, quiet, kind of not quiet, but like outgoing, but not over the top,
Right.
And she was young and she was pretty and she was, she was a nice girl. And I never had any bad interactions with her. So to hear that she was involved in, like, I'm sure what most of us would call a dark world, right?
Yeah.
It kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, like she was really nice. Like everyone who knew her like loved this girl. Like the first time I met her, I remember I was out at like having a cigarette and she walked up to me and was like, "You're so beautiful." And which was like the weirdest thing, coming for her, who was like this model who is gorgeous, and I don't really have the greatest, self-esteem, and it's just like, oh my God, you're just like this wonderful person. And like she, danced at festivals all the time. She like was friends with everybody. So like I don't have a bad thing to say about her. She was just like this like wonderful like light.
I almost don't even want to believe the stuff that, like, even with everything that's going on, I can't even, like, my brain can't even believe some of this shit that I'm hearing, really.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. The investigators are searching the apartment that they have now moved out of. They had found, some blood evidence that was left over inside of the bathrooms. At this point, like, Buddy's getting really antsy about it and under a lot of duress, and he slipped to the detectives that he couldn't think straight and couldn't remember where he had placed her.
That is not a good thing to say.
Right. And that's when they started really focusing on him.
Sure.
Yeah. Oof. So to kind of like fill in the blanks here with this before we start getting into like indictments and stuff, at this point, that is when Buddy went and checked himself into the mental ward over at St. Mary's.
He had realized what he had said. Yeah. What he had done had most likely, or potentially had done, or at least assisted in,
right?
Has sunken into his head, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was pretty wild. I mean, at this point, this is the time I'm trying to like get FMLA for him so he doesn't get himself fired, because I still at this point don't think he's done anything. When he got out, like I went and picked him up. We went and got coffee and like just drove around, but I could tell he was like not the same guy. Like we got some Dunkin' Donuts, we drove around, we ended up kind of like around this area, just driving, and we ended up seeing like a cop like pulling people over, and I could immediately see some sort of like PTSD reaction.
Was it a roadblock?
It wasn't a roadblock. It was just like we were out kind of towards like Leeds, and like 2 cops had someone pulled over, and he like immediately got like scared.
Sure.
And that actually was the last time I saw him not behind bars, because he was like arrested pretty soon after that.
Really? Wow. Now, where did they find him?
So they got him at home, and took him to the Cumberland County Jail. And the reason they did that is his brother at the time was a guard over at Androscoggin.
Oh, sure. So conflict of...
It was like a conflict of interest. So, as you can imagine, there is a lot of fallout at work over this, because you have the camp of people who are, in panic mode. All those who are really great friends with Christiana at the time. And then there was quite the group of us who, were very good friends with Buddy. Not that we weren't friends or didn't like Christiana, but we didn't think he could possibly do something like that.
Sure. So it's just no way.
Yeah, like there was like me, it was like my direct team. We didn't think he, could do it, or at least they were being nice and supporting me, because I was having a very hard time with it.
I could imagine.
Yeah. So that's going on. At that point, I got myself in trouble at work.
Really?
Yes. I didn't feel like anybody was trying to help Buddy. And per the timeline that I had figured out in my head, I didn't think he possibly could do it, because he was at work with me from the morning we opened until the evening when he left and went to Presque Isle. And he hadn't really left much during his lunch. He hung out at my desk. In my head, he couldn't have done it.
Right. Skipped out on wings, went to bed, and was heading up north.
Right. So I sent a screenshot of his time clock to his lawyer, and then he started asking for like video footage, and then I realized at that point I had to tell my boss.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yes. So, almost got fired for that. Thank goodness I did not. But like, it was just like a really big uproar at work. Like I said, you had the people, it was like an us versus them. And like, what do you do when someone you're close to, like, is charged with something like that? Like, you know what you do if you like lose a friend or someone dies, but like,
what happens when it's the other side of the coin?
Yeah, it is crazy. It is absolutely, you don't know, like, you don't prepare for that.
And you, Ashton, being friends of the victim, what are you thinking at this time?
That the things that I can't remember if around this time they're releasing it in the news what they suspect about this girl, but I think around this time I started to hear that she was involved in some prostitution ring, and I was like, no way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was just like, no way. That sounds crazy. That sounds like one of those lame Law and Order defense things that that they build to try to make her, insult her character. I was like, no fucking way, come on.
So you're in disbelief,
right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And like, to kind of like, add to that, like the media were really ridiculous about it. They like, there was like no need to cover that part of her life as much as they did, but it seemed like they were bringing it up constantly, and like the pictures that they were taking of her, like from Shit a Model Mayhem account, they were like taking like a lot of pictures that were a little more suggestive.
Sure.
Right.
And
the media likes to paint their own picture a lot of
Right.
times.
Like they were painting her to be this, like, it was like they were trying to shame her, and it was weird.
And
it was
that's
like
what
some
I
really
mean.
weird victim blaming.
And for what you knew about her, or what we thought we knew about her, is just she lived a double life. Do you know what I mean? Like a serious one.
It's funny. I don't know if it's in other areas, but it seems like at least here, I can say our local media is pretty lame. They do these, like, they put these little spins on things that kind of, it almost like, maybe she was asking for it. This is what happens to people that conduct their lives this way, kind of thing, by projecting her that way.
Right. And it was like not at all the case. It was horrible. So there was like a lot of uproar at work. Again, they didn't really do a ton for the employees while this was going on. In this case, actually, like, rocked to the call center, like, worse than the other one.
Really?
And I think it was because, like, everybody was young. There were people everyone knew really well, And I mean, they at least this time got a counselor to come in for one day. But a lot of what went on, at least in the session that I was in, everyone was complaining because administration wouldn't let us talk about it.
Only with counselors and with...
Right. They didn't want us talking about it. And, you know, if we were in support of Buddy in any way, they didn't want us to talk about it at all, or we were going to get fired, type of thing.
Wow. So they had totally turned on him completely.
Right. Like
they'd seen this before, and they were like, shit, it happened again.
Yeah.
Right.
Something happened again. They're still kind of stinging off of that lawsuit that hit them 3 years prior.
Right. So it was like a pretty like dark time. They did again have the police come in and like tell us to get stun guns and stuff this time. But I mean, they didn't again do a lot.
So if pepper spray doesn't work, just buy a taser.
Right. Type of thing. It was bizarre, and like they didn't even like the last time they had it in like one of our bigger conference room, and a lot of people went, but it was just like they had a small group of people come in this time, and they kind of like just half-assed it.
It's funny to hear Adam say, you know, like ACS at some point realized like, shit, we did it again.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God.
They almost should have handed out pepper spray when they handed out employee ID badges.
Yeah,
Right.
really.
Yeah, it gets rough at this place. You'll need this.
Yeah.
But again, like I don't know how well they were doing their background checks at this point, because Buddy did have a charge.
What kind of a charge?
He had gotten in trouble in Presque Isle for stalking an ex-girlfriend.
Oh.
Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind about the guy.
Yeah, he
just
did have that.
Notate that.
So I don't know how that wouldn't come up on a, background check, but apparently,
But that's not a huge charge.
It's
That's
not-
a minor charge.
yeah.
Maybe that's something that, okay, well, we got this charge, explain it. Well, you know what? She kind of took it more than it really was, and blah, 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 kind of play it down. And,
Can be
well, you know
explained.
what?
Right.
Other than this guy's a great candidate. Let's just give him a shot. We've hired worse people.
And like you
Yeah,
said,
well,
he
I
was
was
he
just
was
gonna say,
reliable. The guy
Right.
came in and worked from.
and I do believe they got credits and stuff for hiring veterans.
Sure.
And he had done like several tours in like Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff. From what I understand, he was wounded too. He had like a gunshot wound in his back. He had shown me. But yeah, like, if we're gonna like step back and talk about some of the hiring practices again, in some of their other sites, because they had sites up in Maine. Some of the more original ones were out on the West Coast, like in Portland, Oregon. They had one in, let's see, there was one in Washington at one point, I believe. They had sites in Juarez, Mexico.
Now, did all these places share the same hiring practices?
Some of them, I imagine, like they had sites out in the Philippines as well, which apparently like were like amazing sites. Like they actually really took the job seriously there, and they always excelled in everything they did. But at least from what I understand, from what I saw over at the Lewiston site and stuff I know from friends over at the Portland, Oregon site, they had practices, at least over there, of hiring people who were on work release.
Yeah.
Like as an actual hiring like model. There were a lot of people on drugs, and I can tell you that for 100% sure over at the Lewiston site as well. And it wasn't just people like, coming in high, whatever. It was like the people like nodding off at their desk, like
Oh, wow.
being on junk.
Wow.
We had many people like completely blitz drunk at their desk. We had one girl who was part of that training class. I don't know where she was hiding her booze, but throughout the day she'd get more and more and more drunk. And this was like stuff we dealt with on a day-to-day. There was no normal day there. It was like issues like that every day. So to have someone like Buddy come in who was like reliable, like he was like
That's a breath of fresh air
a
right
breath
there.
of fresh air.
But now Buddy's found himself in trouble, but they
Right.
haven't found her body.
No, they have not.
So he's in trouble now based on just circumstantial evidence, and there's some DNA evidence that's been found.
Right, and it's nothing with his DNA that actually ties it, other than like he lived at that apartment.
So it would obviously be all over the place.
Right. So there was like a cleanup. They found some blood in the bathroom that tied back to Christiana. I don't believe it was a ton, but there was splatter in that bathroom. At this point, he is now arrested. He's at Cumberland. And I went to visit a few times.
Sure.
Visiting people, if nobody's done that when they're in county, is horrible. It is a horrible situation. So for you to talk to somebody on the phone, I think the entire time that we communicated when he was in county jail, I spent hundreds of dollars, like, putting money
on his calling card. And...
Yes, it was insane. They're very, very strict on the dress code and everything going in there, and you weren't even having contact visits. Like, for the first, like, month or so he was there, it was like you see, like, on TV through the glass with the phone.
And now he's in jail. He hasn't been to court yet.
No, he's in jail.
He's just awaiting.
He was in jail for a long time. And then it graduated to a sort of not behind glass visitation where they put all the inmates in a cage and you sit around the cage and talk through a grate where you can't really see each other.
Talk through a what?
Like a grate. It was like weird. It was kind of like a mesh thing, kind of like the mouth guard here on the
pop filter.
The pop filter. But it was like a cage all around, and where you could actually talk through was there. And you couldn't really see each other. It was really weird. So, I mean, it was an experience.
Could the other inmates hear your conversation?
Yes. Yeah, you were
Nothing's private.
Nothing's private. It was so crammed in. Like, we were sitting, like, butt to butt with other people, like, during their visits. You couldn't hear anything because everyone was so loud.
And this is the jail?
This is the Cumberland County Jail.
And at this time, do you think he still has done nothing?
I still, at this time, think he has done nothing.
And that's why you're still going to visit him.
Right. Yep. So, I mean, we spent, like, tons of money and stuff like that, putting money on his commissary. Like, all of us were, like, writing letters. So, at work at this point, ACS is starting to fold. So the campaigns are closing. The campaign that I was on, Finian, actually completely closed down, and everyone was basically laid off. And that's when I ended up at our current employer.
Are you still working at?
I had already left.
You jumped ship. Are you with our current employer at this time?
I'm with the current employer.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm now gone, and then slowly but surely, all of the campaigns except for Allstate like closed down, and then they were there for another 2 years before the place totally like sunk.
Sign still hanging.
Yeah, sign still hanging.
Hiring somehow.
But at this point, I'm working for our current employer, and I start getting phone calls, and it is now the state police that are calling me, and the district attorney.
Wow.
So, the district attorney and state police detective strategy was to turn all of Buddy's friends at work that had been writing him letters state witnesses to testify against him.
And how many people are this?
So I was one of them that was subpoenaed. A friend of mine, Derek, he was one, I know for sure because I saw him at the police station. My friend Larry, I know, was one of them. I think there were a few others, but there was like a good handful of us. I don't know that any of us actually had to go to court, but from that point when we were subpoenaed until the day of the trial, we had to like keep our phones on us at all times, for the possibility that we might have to just drop everything and go to court to testify.
Wow.
And
so this is causing anxiety in everybody's lives.
Horrible.
Right.
And like I had just, started with our new employer, and I had to let them know this, that, hey, I'm like subpoenaed as a state witness in a murder trial. But it was like daily harassment from like, both sides. So like the district attorney would call, I have to deal with them. Buddy's lawyer would call, want to know what they said. And it was like on and on and on with them. And, I know for a fact my friend Derek, we spoke earlier today about it because I wanted to kind of know what he dealt with. It was the same thing. It was just like this constant daily back and forth with, the defense and the prosecution.
As they're building a case up against Buddy.
Right. Trying to get information from us. And then we had to go in early in the morning to meet with them before the trial. And it was real weird. And I had, told him I didn't think he had done anything. And as I was leaving, the state detective said to me, he's like, no, Jessica, you're not the only one. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, Buddy has all sorts of girlfriends. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
We're friends. But like trying to like, I don't know, get me jealous or upset or something to try to like turn on him. It was real creepy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so
Weird thing to say.
It was a really weird thing to say, and that was like the final thing they said to me. And thankfully, I never actually had to go in.
Really?
I never actually had to go to court.
And this whole time, you're probably thinking you're going to have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they basically had like gone through everybody that was writing to him and like started bugging all those people.
They put a lot of pressure on you for them not to actually take you to court, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know if it was to like pressure us or to like pressure Buddy into saying something because, you know, they
Bit
were
of both,
harassing
right? I
was
his
gonna say
friends.
both.
Both.
Yeah.
Scare tactics.
Yeah, so it was just crazy.
so with that, let's get to when he actually gets to court. What happens?
So they go through all of the testimony and everything. They actually gave immunity to Brandy, Alana, who worked for her, Levi, who was the boyfriend, who also worked at ACS, gave them complete immunity for the whole prostitution charge to testify then against Buddy.
So they got family turning on him.
Right. So at that point, every one of them rolled on him.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of, you know, doubt comes into, you know, some people's minds with this.
And so what were they saying? What are they saying he did? That he had killed her in the apartment? The whole story with the hitting her head against the tub and then drowning her in the tub? And
yeah, that's all like from the affidavit from their actual
it's
testimonies.
all their hearsay.
Yes, it was all their hearsay. So you basically have these people, you know, in the house. No one was there but them. They're all like on the hook kind of for like the prostitution charge and the murder at this point, and then they give them like, you know, a get out of jail free card, and they all rolled like immediately.
So
Wow.
Do you think he did it?
It's hard to say. So
Well, what did the juries think about him? What did the jury think he did?
So the jury did find him guilty.
Sure.
It did find him guilty, and Buddy did finally present Brandy as an alternative suspect, but the prosecution like didn't buy it because based on the testimony everybody else was giving, he was the only one with the window to do it, which would have been that small window when
45 minutes
or less around that when they were, you know, left to go to either over to ACS or Dunkin' Donuts.
Half
that
an
morning.
hour.
Yeah. So they're giving that window and stating that's when it happens, and it couldn't have been anybody else, and it went for everybody else's alibi.
I hate to take this route, but does anyone else think that if there was another male involved, then they would have took suspicion in another male compared to there being a male and then a couple females to compare this to?
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
Which might make sense because someone had to hold her down, right?
Right, and the thing about it is for me, it seemed really out of character, you know, for my friend to do that. Just based on how he interacted and like genuinely cared about everybody at work, like it just wasn't in his character to do it. And then the manner of killing, like I said before, it doesn't seem like something that he needed to do. He was a very big, strong person. That's why I always thought it was Brandy that did it.
Because
who would
she
need
would
to
have
do something
use
like that?
all of her weight in
Right.
order to hold this girl, probably her size down, right?
Right.
Now, he was found guilty. Has he been sentenced to?
So he has been sentenced to 55 years. He is currently serving over in Warren.
And that's at the state prison.
That's at the state prison. At sentencing, he finally did give up where Christiana's remains were. So her skeletal remains were found much later. Actually in Lisbon.
A neighboring town.
That's right 10 minutes down the road too.
Yep, they found her actually it was another ATV trail. So it was an ATV trail off of Ferry Road in Lisbon, kind of where there's like this place called the Left Hand Club. It's out towards like if you were driving down Ferry Road in Lisbon, and then we're gonna end up like in the rural part of Lewiston. That's where they ended up
like
finding
out
her.
past the dump type of thing.
Yes.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. I bike
so-
that road sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be biking it anymore.
Yeah, but that's where they ended up finding her. And they really didn't give a lot of leniency. I don't know if that's what he was trying for, but he did finally give up her location.
And so now he's
Now he is in Warren.
He is in Warren
for the next
He's in
55
Warren.
for
years.
the next 55.
And there's no parole.
I don't believe so. I don't really know how that's handled in Maine. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what's going on with that. He has tried to appeal. One of the first appeals he was trying to get for a new trial because the district attorney, who's now actually a judge, they found that he was acting inappropriately in the trial, like mouthing to the jury the words "he did it."
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. They didn't end up giving him a new trial for it, but he currently is still fighting the case.
Interesting. Now, you had informed him that you were going to be coming out to do a podcast, correct?
Yeah. After the sentence, I started feeling weird about it. We actually hadn't talked in many, many years. So when I decided to come on to the podcast, I actually reached out, letting him know what I was doing, trying to catch up with how things have been going with him. And he actually wrote a pretty lengthy letter back. Yeah.
Anything on that you'd like to share?
So, I don't know if you guys want me to read the whole thing.
Well, it is pretty lengthy. I guess we'll leave it up to you. I think it would be great to read the whole thing, but if there are certain sections that you think really stick out that you'd rather just share with us.
I can read it.
Because I did start reading it during the break, and it is a very intense letter to read, especially being so close. I can't imagine how you got through it.
Right. All right, so I can read it. It's pretty long. It does give a bit into his character, but it starts out, "Dear Miss Jess, holy crap on a poop stick. It is so awesome to hear from you. It's incredibly funny because I have a list of friends that I still keep the address for, and you were one of them. I remember having my friend ask you if you still wanted to write to me, and I seem to remember sending something out, but I also remember the jail holding back a bunch of my sent mails trying to break my spirit."
Wow. They can do that?
Yeah, they can. They did that a lot when he was in, like, Cumberland, too.
That's awful.
So you would write a letter, and you wouldn't hear back for weeks because they
Right.
weren't giving it to him.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So there is so very much going on, and I will inform you about everything. At least I will try to catch you up on everything I can remember since I came here to Maine State Prison. First off, I am still fighting my case. We lost the first appeal because even though the judge who reviewed the case said that everything the prosecution did was sophomoric, unprofessional, and wrong, he still upheld it. I currently have my third lawyer who is looking over it. This fellow is taking his time, and I am okay with that so we can get everything right, so to speak. Since my first couple of weeks here, I've been working my butt off on a lot of things. I have several different jobs, including laundry, working on floors, and industries. I'm currently still working in industries, but instead of working on the floor, which I've done everything from the lathe to refinishing work to special projects. They know if there is something that needs to be made that I have the technical know-how to make it happen. Right now, though I work on the payroll, I do different statistical evaluations. In 4 years, when the current boss leaves, my friend Leroy and I will be running this place. We are a pretty awesome team. He is very technical but hates people, and I'm very good with people. And though I am very good technically, he is a genius at woodwork. I do love my job, and I get paid a decent amount of money, so I continue to send money into the college account for Mikey that I've created. And I also send money to my mother because we also do some dabbling in stocks. Granted, it's not a large valued stocks, it's more or less just so my mother can have fun watching our stuff go up and down. And she does a pretty good job in picking some decent stocks. It makes her happy, so I'm happy. I've also been doing a tremendous amount of other activities. I keep pretty active with sports. This current season is volleyball, and next it will be softball. And finally, my favorite is soccer. The first couple of sports I'm okay at, but soccer I am pretty awesome. Not because I'm some great scorer, because I'm really not, but because I'm awesome at defense, and people tend to muscle past me and land on their ass. I'm sort of proud of that. We tend to win a lot on those, and I tend to feel it the next day. I also get a chance to work out at night, so I'm a slightly bigger fellow than you were used to before. If I remember, I will send you a really recent picture of me and my puppy, which he has.
That was a picture we were passing around earlier.
Yep.
We'll put it up on the post.
For sure.
Which leads me to one of my other activities. I recently joined a program that helps rehabilitate puppies that have a rough history. In fact, the one that I have now, his name is Benny, was found outside and it looked like he had been in a vicious dog fight. He was only a wee little puppy and he has part of his ear missing and a few scars around his body.
Oh.
He was very skittish when he got here because of my awesome puppy loving, he's slowly coming out of his shell. I love puppies and all types of animals, and it helps me to be a positive influence. Let's see here. I have also another thing that takes up a bunch of my time. I took a year of training so I could become a hospice worker. Since the average age of the guys here in prison, we are getting older and older, and they need people to show genuine compassion as they pass away. We as a team will sit with them, and they decide to be put on vigil with the two of us. We'll always be by their side until they pass. We also go down in different teams during show to help others heal and work through some of their physical rehabilitation needs. After all of that, if I have time to play cards and take a few minutes for myself, but as you can see, I like to be busy and try to be a positive influence on things. I've made some really good friends here as well. Let's see here. The next paragraph, he starts talking about people at ACS, and I didn't really get their permission or anything, so I don't want to like read their names.
Nope, that's fair.
So let's see here where I can leave off. So basically he states, I know that most people have written me off as being guilty, and I'm sure that as soon as a guilty verdict has come out, people believe what they want to believe. It is crazy how quick people will throw you away. To be perfectly clear, I'm still stating my innocence. I did not kill her, and the one thing I did learn from this whole experience is life is not like what you see on Law and Order. The cops don't find the evidence and then create the story. They create a story and make the evidence fit whatever story they deem fit. The only reason that the cops first started looking at me is because they came to ACS one day, our birthday, so I'm assuming he's talking about him and Brandy, trying to ask us some questions, and I told them we had an appointment on the very next day, and we would be there, and the cops on record verbally saying he did it. Then the foolishness about the prosecutor pretending to fall asleep anytime my lawyer talked so the jury would see it. There were several different ways I got royally screwed, but I really can't tell you through a letter because we're still fighting it. Let's see here. He starts talking about the podcast because I told him we were doing it. Mm-hmm. Basically, he said if the listeners want to write to him, you can totally do that. It's pretty easy to find the address. You just go and Google Maine Department of Corrections inmate list. So let's see here. He says, whenever I start to think about my case, I tend to get discombobulated. I get frustrated because I've always been a positive person and I always strive to do the right thing. Even here, as you can see from my earlier descriptions of my life, I've also gotten in the way of people who are trying to shank somebody else. I've broken up several fights. I've tutored several people in math and helped them get their GED. One guy was so thankful that when he got out, his mother wrote me a thank you letter because he was striving to do better, and I had a big smile on my face because of that. For being in prison, I have as good of a life as I can for myself. Some people worry about that. I'm a big enough dude and have proved myself enough that no one messes with me, and I'm well liked because of my joking, positive attitude. Let's see. I do wish that I were out there, and I do miss things like when you and me used to get some nice Thai lunches and the competitions that we used to run. I miss you, and I hope you knew that. As for being a stepmom type, it would never surprise me that you would fit the mold perfectly. You are always the mom type for us on the team. You are caring, compassionate, and patient. You have an amazing heart and are just plain a remarkable person that fits it. Let's see here. I was talking about outside distractions at work, so I won't talk about that. Real soon, in the next few months, we are getting tablets and they're going to have some sort of texting program. Anyone that wants to send messages can. I can text directly to a phone as a much faster way of communication. If you happen to talk to anyone from the past and writing isn't an option, I can always call as well. It's not like it is in county, and you guys don't have to pay when I call. I do, and I'm okay with that. I appreciate all that you do, and I'm going to actually head to work now. I anxiously await your reply. You are missed, Buddy.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. This is a great letter.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he's found a way to adapt and maintain a positive attitude and try to
Right.
stay happy under the circumstances that he's in.
Right.
But Jake, as an outsider listening to this story, what's your opinion?
I'm so conflicted because I don't know. I'm conflicted because you have such a positive experience with him, and you give off his vibe like you were blown away that this could be him.
Right.
On some level, I can totally understand that. On another level, he's helping run a prostitution ring.
Right.
It's really hard to judge. You want to believe you want to put on the rose-colored glasses there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope he didn't do it.
That's why it's so hard.
Yeah. All I could say is I hope he didn't do it because he's in prison. He's in prison doing good things and trying to better other people and himself. And from what you tell us, he was a really positive, outgoing, always worked hard kind of person, was always at work. If you needed some extra help, you could always go to him.
Right.
It just seems like those character traits, I don't know, it doesn't paint the picture of a killer to me.
Right. At the same time, though, things I had, thought of, he was a war vet, the country doesn't do a lot to help people with PTSD, rather.
Right.
What if he snapped?
Right.
Even just, sometimes really great people can snap and things can happen in an instant.
Right.
It's something that's a possibility. What do you think, Ashton?
To go along with what you guys said, weirdly enough, he could not even remember he did that. Like,
right.
It could all be a part of that PTSD. No, I didn't do that. And he could completely believe he didn't do that.
Right.
Right.
And the story, I really can't say, for what they painted about the girl, I can't believe that. And then what can I say? I think he did it and Jurgen knew him and she doesn't think he did it. You know what I mean?
It's the craziest thing. Like, definitely, I absolutely 100%, yes, he did cover it up. I do believe he did dispose of her body. Yeah. Everything else I'm just so unsure.
He's the nicest killer I ever met.
Right.
I'll tell you that much.
It's a rough one.
I mean, it's hard to say. I kind of got to agree with everybody here. It's really...
it's just sad.
It seems like it's tragedy really all around.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I feel like we put pretty heavy emphasis on him, and obviously we did it because he is the star of the show. Right. But what's really sad is this lady got murdered for nothing.
Yeah.
That's the saddest part of this whole thing. And
she was like 21 years old.
That's so young.
It's sad.
So let's say the sister did it. Why?
Yeah, why?
Again, it's hard to say. She definitely, in my opinion, had more motive.
Argument over some car keys?
I don't think it was over the car keys. I think that they were having trouble, like, for some time.
Maybe with the business?
Probably with the business. I think there could have been a fight. I mean, that's how I think things went down. I could be obviously totally wrong, but it's just crazy.
So the weird way that things work is maybe in the future they'll bring his sister up on charges and
as of right now they got their man. Yeah, so you probably won't see that.
Well,
on the books, I mean, this guy's found guilty and that's that.
Open
and shut, yeah.
I mean, if you want to go into a where are they now type of thing, yes, like Buddy is in Warren doing 55. Immediately after this case, his sister, their mother, her son took off to Texas.
Well, that's interesting.
Immediately.
And you could easily write that off as, well, they want to get away from the whole situation. They don't want to live this life. People are going to be looking at them.
Or you could say they were running from something.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look at a lot of the other stories we've done.
Yeah,
people not necessarily killed the person, but had something to do with it, and they take off to California or something.
Well, you took my joke. Thanks.
Sorry.
But yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I was just gonna say, people when they kill someone typically take off to California.
I'd like to know if his family still keeps in touch with him. If his sister, does she reach out to him? His mom?
Yeah, so at least the sister, I'm not sure. I mean, he is sending money over to an account he set up for his nephew. He does still talk to his mom because they're doing like the stock trading thing together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about him and Brandy. I definitely could check into that the next time he writes and like maybe do like a quick little follow-up thing at some point.
We love follow-ups.
Yeah, I do know his brother after like leaving Androscoggin County Jail. I think that's why they ended up in Texas, because he ended up starting to work like border patrol.
Interesting, yeah. So the job brought him there.
Right.
As opposed to escaping.
Right.
As far as where Levi is now, and I hope this doesn't get me sued or whatever, but that's a more like...
Just start every sentence with allegedly.
Allegedly. This is all heavily speculative.
This is all heavily speculative, but he now has a position on the Auburn City Council.
Which is a neighboring city from here.
Which I find really interesting based on just like being involved in the case, how he would get elected.
Maybe they don't do their background checks either.
Not.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, he did come out in the paper, like basically coming out as a victim of manipulation by the Robinson twins. I found that in the Sun Journal, which I found really interesting.
Was this before or after he was elected?
I think it was before.
Yeah. Now he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I know he volunteers with like kids at school. It's just an all-around kind of weird situation based on, you know, what I knew of him, because he also had worked at ACS for a very long time. He was always kind of sketchy with the ladies.
Interesting.
As well. So
he seems to fit more of a mold.
Yeah, right?
So
wow. This is definitely an interesting story for sure.
All right, guys, this is getting on the longer side.
Yeah, we should probably bring it in and wrap it up. Well, thank you for coming out on for this one, Jurgen. Yeah. We've had 2 really good stories from you, so we're definitely going to have to get you to come back.
All right,
thanks
for having me.
You have to become a frequent flyer. And Ashton, always, thank you again for coming back on.
And she brought on these great beers, man.
Yeah, thank you for
that. I'll put some of yours up.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Reptar Godzilla on the front.
Dancing in the Ruins. Check them out. They're definitely a 5 Scully figure. Now, our social media is Facebook, Stories from the Shed, Instagram, Stories from the Shed Podcast, YouTube, Stories from the Shed Podcast, Twitter, Stories from Shed.
I love that you do that in the Russian accent.
We're skipping iMessage and Gmail, sftspodcast@gmail.com. And again, thank you everybody for listening, and tune in next week. Bye-bye.